My name is Maya Reeves. I'm 31 years old. I'm a captain in the United States Army, Intelligence Officer, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Last Thanksgiving, my mother looked across the dinner table at 22 relatives and said, out loud, with her wine glass in her hand, "Soldiers are just government property. They tell you when to eat, when to sleep, when to die." My daughter gave up her whole life for that. 22 people heard it. My Aunt Carol stopped chewing. My Uncle Ray looked at the ceiling. My father said nothing. He never does. I said nothing either. But here's what nobody at that table knew. 40 minutes earlier, I had been on a classified call that I had stepped outside to take, and the man who had called me, a 2-star general with 31 years of service, was, at that exact moment, pulling into my parents' driveway. Because he had driven 4 hours to thank me in person for something I cannot fully tell you about. Drop your city and the time you're watching. I read every single comment. Let me take you back. Because you cannot understand that dinner table without understanding 31 years of being the daughter who got in the way. My mother, Sandra Reeves, is a woman who measures worth in visibility. What people see, what people say at church, what gets posted on Facebook. My brother Caleb, 3 years older, loud, charming, the kind of man who walks into a room and immediately finds the person with the most social currency, was her proof of concept. Her evidence that she had done something right. Me? I was the quiet one, the one who read too much. The one who got a full ROTC scholarship at 19, and my mother's response was, and I am quoting from memory because some sentences you do not forget, "I just hope you know what you're trading away." What was I trading away exactly? She never said. I think she meant softness. The option of being decorative, the possibility of a life that photographed well. I shipped to basic at 19. My mother did not come to my commissioning ceremony. She had a prior commitment, my cousin's bridal shower. I found out later she had told people at the shower that I joined the military because I couldn't figure out what else to do. I was 19, standing in dress blues, receiving my lieutenant's bars from a colonel who shook my hand and said I had the highest intelligence aptitude score his unit had seen in 11 years. My mother was eating cucumber sandwiches, but here's what I did with that. And this is the part that matters. I didn't call home angry. I didn't post about it. I went back to work and I became very, very good at something very few people are allowed to know about. Army intelligence is not what movies make it. It is not glamorous. It is exhausting, often invisible, and it requires a specific kind of person. Someone who can hold a great deal of information in their mind without needing to be acknowledged for it. Someone who has spent their whole life being underestimated and has learned to use that as an asset. My mother trained me for this job. She just doesn't know it. By 28, I had 2 commendations I cannot name and a clearance level most people in the military never reach. By 30, I was running operations that, and I want to be precise here, had direct impact on the safety of American personnel overseas. I know what I did. The people I work for know what I did. My family thought I filed papers at a base in North Carolina. Thanksgiving this year, my parents' house in Fayetteville. My mother had been at her best all week, meaning she was performing warmth for the extended family while directing small, precise criticisms at me when no one else was listening. You know the type. The comment about my haircut at the airport. The observation that I looked tired, like the job is wearing you down. The question asked in front of my aunt about whether I'd thought about doing something else before it was too late. Dinner was turkey, stuffing, and 22 relatives packed into a dining room that smelled like candles and old carpet. Then my mother stood to say grace, and somewhere between bless this food and amen, she pivoted, the way she does, smooth and sudden, like a car changing lanes without signaling. "I'm just going to say," she said, still holding everyone's hands in the prayer circle, "that I worry about my daughter. I worry that she's given her whole life to an institution that sees her as a number. Soldiers are just government property, you know? They tell you when to eat, when to sleep, when to die. She said it warmly. That's the thing. She said it with love in her voice, the way you'd express concern for someone with a terminal diagnosis. 22 people nodded sympathetically. My Aunt Carol squeezed my hand. I looked at my plate, and then I heard tires on the gravel driveway. I want you to picture this precisely. 22 people around a table, turkey going cold. My mother still holding her wine glass, satisfied with the gravity she had just created. The doorbell rang. My father went to answer it. We heard the door open. We heard my father say, and his voice had something in it I had never heard before, a kind of sudden recalibration. "Can I help you?" And then a voice I knew very well said, "Good evening, sir. I apologize for the interruption. I'm looking for Captain Maya Reeves. I was told she'd be here." My father appeared in the dining room doorway. His face was doing something complicated. Behind him stood Brigadier General Thomas Hale. 2 stars on his shoulders, dress uniform, the kind of posture that changes the air pressure in a room. 22 people went completely silent. General Hale looked down the table, found my face, and he said, not loudly, not performing, just directly, the way military people speak when they mean it. "Captain Reeves, I drove up from Bragg because I wanted to tell you in person. What you did saved lives. My people came home because of your work. I needed you to hear that from me directly." He paused. "I also wanted to meet your family." He looked at my mother, Sandra Reeves, who 40 minutes earlier had explained to 22 relatives that soldiers are government property. Set her wine glass down on the table, very carefully, and said nothing for a very long time. What happened next, I will tell you exactly. General Hale stayed for 20 minutes. He was gracious and warm. He ate a piece of pie my aunt offered him, complimented the house, shook my father's hand twice. He told the table in broad terms that didn't breach classification that I had been doing work that most people in this country will never know about and should be grateful exists. My cousin asked what branch he was. He told her. She Googled his name under the table and then showed her husband the screen. My Aunt Carol, who had squeezed my hand during my mother's grace, put her arm around me and didn't say anything. She didn't need to. My mother asked General Hale one question, and I will remember it for the rest of my life. She asked, "How long has Maya been important?" He looked at her for a moment. Then he said, pleasantly, "Since the day she showed up, ma'am." Then he thanked her for raising me, said goodbye to the table, and left. The room after he left was the quietest I have ever heard my parents' house. My mother picked up her wine glass again. She took a long sip. She looked at the turkey. My brother Caleb, to his credit, was the first one to speak. He looked at me across the table and said, "Maya, why didn't you ever tell us?" I thought about that for a second. The honest answer is complicated. Part of it was security. There are things I genuinely cannot discuss. But part of it was something else, something I've been sitting with since Thanksgiving. I didn't tell them because telling them had stopped feeling like something I needed. I had spent 10 years waiting for my mother to ask about my life the way she asked about Caleb's. 10 years of, "How's the base?" when she meant, "How's the weather there?" Not a real question, a placeholder. At some point, I stopped expecting the question and started just doing the work. The general didn't come because I asked him to. He came because he wanted to. That's a different thing entirely. I drove back to Bragg on Sunday. My mother called when I was 2 hours out. I picked up. She said, "Maya, I want you to know I'm proud of you." I said, "I know, Mom." She said, "I didn't know." I said, "I know you didn't." And that was the whole conversation. Short, plain, true. We have talked 3 times since Thanksgiving. The conversations are different now. Not fixed, not suddenly warm, but different. She asks real questions. She listens to part of the answer. It is, for us, progress. My father sent me a text the night of Thanksgiving that I have saved. It said, I should have driven to that commissioning ceremony. I'm sorry I didn't. I'm proud of you. 12 words, 12 years late. Still, I read them twice. Here's what I've learned from Maya in Fayetteville, 31 apparently government property. The work you do in silence is still work. The lives you protect without credit are still lives. The version of you that exists beyond your family's story about you. That version is real, and it does not require their acknowledgement to function. But here's the harder thing, the thing I'm still figuring out. You cannot perform invisibility forever and then be surprised when the people closest to you have no idea who you are. At some point, you have to let someone in, not for validation, just because being known by the people you love is a different kind of safety, and it matters. The general knocked on my parents' door because he thought it was important that they know. He was right. Tell me, if that had been your Thanksgiving table, would you have told them or let the general do the talking? Comment below and drop your city and the time. I'm in Fort Bragg, and the work continues. Until next time.